Again, Renee Myers, aka More My. We're back for another reading with story time with More My, finishing up the book Centered Trading Your Plans for a Life That Matters by Jason Brown, former NFL player turned farmer. If you need to catch up on some of these reads, hold on, real fool and be doing the most. Okay, so I'm back. My apologies. I was saying that sometimes it's Android I record on Instagram be acting up. But if you need to catch up on some of my other reads in the story time with more of my playlists, please visit my YouTube channel, which is my name, MorGanMyers. You'll see a red logo with a yellow M inside. Or you can type in story time with more of my on YouTube. So anyways, let's get into finishing this book. We're in chapter 10. And the next few books that I'll be reading will be focused on gardening, farming, and natural childbirth. So, chapter 10 is entitled The Real Harvest. I was outside working when from the house, Tay called me. Tay is Jason's wife. Jason, the baby's coming, she said. That's great, I said. I'll give the midwife a call and she'll be here in a couple of hours. And no, Jason, you don't understand, Tay said. The baby's coming now. Right now. My stomach dropped to my ankles. Right now, I said? Like now? Tay and I have always believed in having babies as naturally as possible. When I was playing with the Baltimore Ravens and we were expecting our first JW, we prepared and prayed over an awesome birthing plan. We shared it with the birthing team at the hospital and they seemed fine with it. But hospitals have their own worries. Even though women have been giving birth for thousands of years, well before the first hospitals were built, it can be dangerous. Doctors don't want anything bad happening to mother and child, and they certainly don't want to be liable for anything that might happen. So if something unexpected occurs, doctors and nurses tend to fall back on things they're familiar with, and that means drugs. The unexpected happened with JW. The labor went on longer than any of us hoped it would, so the birth unit suggested that Tay accept some, is it Pitocin? Pitocin, a drug that makes the contractions stronger and much more intense. Then, when Tay was really feeling those harsher contractions brought about by the Pitocin, maybe I'm going to just say Pitocin. I'm going to go with Pitocin. Then when Tay was really feeling those harsher contractions brought about by the Pitocin, they offer her an epidural, a strong painkiller that gets injected right into the patient's back. But those epidurals sometimes can impact the baby's own heart rate, and that's what we saw with JW. While he was still inside Tay, his heart rate dropped, so the doctor decided to perform an emergency cesarean section. Don't worry, the doctor said. We've done this procedure countless times. Everything's going to be fine. And it was. When JW finally decided to see the world, he came out as healthy as could be. He's 12 right now and the engineer of the family. He loves to tinker around and build stuff. He already drives everything we have on the farm. The truck, the tracker, the forklift, you name it. And it's in part so he can figure out how it all works. Even if you tell JW not to drive something, well, you better hide your keys, just in case. Still, the birth at the hospital felt very unnatural to us, and when our second child was due to be born while we were living in St. Louis, Tay and I were determined again to do it as naturally as we could. Again, the hospital thought that our birthing plan was just great. The staff was on board with everything we hoped to do until it came time to give birth. Naomi's birth story was a carbon copy of JW's. For the second time, we were forced to do an emergency C-section. Naomi is 9 now and an artist like my brother was. Last year I bought her a sketch pad for Christmas and she filled every one of the pads, 200 pages with art by the end of February. She draws beautiful scenes, especially of the farm, the barns, the silos, trees, and ponds. Whenever I need to send a special thank you note to somebody, I ask Naomi to draw me a picture. I tell her who the card's to and what's it for. I tell her exactly what I need, and in 30 minutes she'll have a beautiful card ready for me. She's like our own home's very own Hallmark store. Tay and I had always wanted at least 3 children, and we were determined this time to do the birth the natural way. But even though the second C-section didn't change our desire to birth our next baby more naturally, doctors and hospitals were skeptical. As we talked with doctors about our plans, none of them would take us on. To perform a vaginal birth after 2 emergency C-sections was, at the very least, unusual, they told us, and Tay's history made her too much of a risk to go a different route. Her history suggests that a C-section is the best way to go, they said. We weren't going to do that again, not if we could avoid it. If a doctor wouldn't help us through a more natural childbirth, we'd take matters into our own hands. We decided we would have the baby at home. We hired a midwife, not a doctor, and in December 2012, she helped bring Noah into the world. A very short time after we bought the farm itself. He was the first baby born there. Beautiful. Noah has spent 7 whole years on the farm now, and he's the household's little preacher. Sometimes he'll just stand up and start preaching to his little brothers and sisters as if he were in the church pulpit. This is what Jesus said, he'll say, and this is what Jesus did. And Noah knows. He knows the stories of Jesus backward and forward. He's the family's bookworm, too. We homeschool the kids, and every day we have time where we can go outside and play, recess time, so they can burn off their excess energy, and once they're back inside, pay attention again. But Noah, even though he might be the child who has the most pent-up energy and needs recess time more than anyone, will try to work all the angles so he can stay inside and just read. Dad, can I stay inside and read my Bible? Noah will ask. No, don't read your Bible, I find myself telling him. Go outside and play. I never thought I'd be telling any of my children to quit reading their Bibles. I bet most Christian moms and dads would love it if their kids wanted to skip playtime to be in the Word, but you don't know Noah. By 2014, the year Tay gave me that anxious call, she and I were mother and father to those 3 wonderful children. When it came to having babies, my wife was a seasoned pro by then. I was not. Sure, I'd been around when Noah was born. I helped where I could, but Tay and the midwife did all the real work. It was a beautiful experience. Awesome, in the truest definition of the word. But I appreciated the moment mostly on the sidelines, admiring the miracle of birth like an art connoisseur might appreciate a famous Renaissance sculpture, or like a fan in the stands might cheer an overtime win. It's all well and good to appreciate the process and celebrate the final product. It's another thing to actually help bring it about. I was expecting my role to be much the same this time around. Our midwife, though, knew that babies aren't that predictable. This baby might decide to show up when she wasn't there, or he might come much faster than expected. So, a couple of weeks before Tay went into labor, our midwife pulled me aside and handed me a small box. She said, "Hey, Jason, just in case anything happens, if there's an emergency or something, let me give you this. There's some material in it that you should look over if I'm not here. Read it over. Get comfortable with it." I smiled and nodded and thought, read it? Are you kidding me? If I could do this myself, why would I be paying you? You'll be here. Everything will be fine. I pushed the whole conversation off to the side, and I didn't think about it again. Well, not until the baby's coming right now. In that moment, as Tay was shouting at me over the phone that our 4th baby was on his way and that he was coming as fast as a runaway train, I came to a staggering realization. I was going to have to deliver the baby myself. As gently and calmly as I could, I said, Tay, do you remember what you did with the birthing kit? All that material that I was supposed to read? Well, she told me, and I had to skim through all that reading in about 15 minutes. I gave myself a crash course in delivering babies, reading the stuff that looked important, flying through the illustrations, and feeling very unequal to the task of helping bring a new life into the world. I'm going to pause right here, because I said that my next few readings are going to be about gardening and farming, as well as natural birth and how to eat properly for healthy, successful pregnancies as I get into studying to get certified to become a doula, right? Jason ain't right. That midwife gave him that material so he could read over it and be adjusted just in case something happened, and he didn't. Dads have to be as equally involved in the process. I'm flexing in my little Monstera earrings. These are so cute. Anyways, dads have to be as equally invested in the daggone birthing process as the mother. Come on now. It ain't just her having a baby. It's y'all having a baby. She's pushing it out, but you helped create it, and we need our daddy doulas to be just as attentive to the moms and helping in the birth process as much as possible, okay? Like, it means so much. Yes, it's great to have a midwife and doctors there, but it means even more to have the person that helped inseminate you with the seed there and understanding this process of birth and not just leaving it up to the mothers. And that is something that I hear sometimes when mothers have these babies, that fathers just seem so disconnected or absent from the experience, and then may even become jealous when the baby is more attached to mom because, breastfeeding and all of that, and just, they came out of this womb. So, there's going to be that connection, and so dads may not always feel as connected sometimes. And so helping the mother and being a part of the birthing experience as much as possible is so important, All right, getting back to it. So the last thing I read said that he was flying through illustrations and feeling very unequal to the task of helping bring a new life into the world. It took me more than a year to really learn how to bring sweet potatoes into being. Now I was going to have to deliver a child. Tay had no confidence in me whatsoever. Her stress level was straight through the farmhouse roofs. The fact that I didn't know where the birthing kit was, or that I hadn't read over it, hadn't read over what was in it didn't help Tay's trust in my abilities one little bit. And I couldn't blame her. She knew the truth, that I really didn't know what I was doing. When I played football, everything we did during the week pointed to getting ready for a 3-hour game. The coaching staff sometimes tried to make it feel as if those games were the most important 3 hours of our lives, and the preparation we underwent for those 3 short hours was unreal. Now, in what was really one of the most important moments of my life, I felt woefully underprepared. I didn't have a pregame meeting to go over the game plan. I didn't have a coach to help me work through the techniques. And that afternoon, I was definitely far more terrified than I'd ever been before going up against the Pittsburgh Steelers or the New England Patriots. This was real. I knew exactly what was on the line. The life and health of my child and the health and safety of the wife I loved. This was my family. So I did what I always do when I'm way out of my depth. I prayed. God, I have no idea what I'm doing. I admitted as I prepared for the birth. So God, I need your help. I need you to anoint my hands. I need you to give me the wisdom right now. In my time of need, give me the strength and understanding. I need to bring this little baby safely into our family. After the prayer, I took JW and Naomi and Noah and sat them down at the table. I made them dinner as fast as I could and put it in front of them. All right, let's say our prayers and eat, I said. I led them in grace, smiled reassuringly, and went over to the kitchen sink and washed my hands like a surgeon. And when I walked, absolutely terrified, into the next room where my wife was in labor, I tried to be as calm and assertive as I could. I reminded Tay of various breathing techniques, trying to coach her through the pain. I held her hand, wiped her forehead, and assured her that everything was fine. Everything was great. Everything was okay. But on the inside, I was freaking out. I knew things were not okay at all because I had no idea what I was doing. You're doing great, dear, I said. Breathe. Use your breathing exercises. I needed some of those breathing exercises too. Our 4th child hadn't made his big debut just yet, but let me tell you, there was still a baby in that room, or at least some big farmer who inside was crying like one. I went back in the other room to check on the kids. Praise God, I thought. They're all doing fine. No one's screaming, no one's crying, and no one's bleeding. You're doing great, I assured the children. I called my mom and dad, who lived just 40 minutes away, and told them the glorious, terrifying news. He's on the way, I shouted, maybe a little too loudly, and I went back in with Tay. A few minutes later, I helped Tay into our bathroom, where we got a big tub and settled her in there. And right there, in our bathtub, I helped our son into our home, our family, our world. After the delivery, my former sports agent, Harold, got wind of the story, and he either misunderstood the circumstances or, like some people, decided to embellish it a little. You remember Jason Brown? I imagine him telling folks at parties. The center, played for the Ravens and the Rams, had this crazy idea of becoming a farmer. Well, get this. He delivered his own baby out in the middle of a meadow. Nope, no meadow, just a bathtub. I wasn't fending off coyotes or raccoons, just my own fear. But I think it makes for a pretty good story anyway. We named him Lunsford Bernard Brown in honor of my father, in honor of my brother. He's the 3rd member of the Brown family who's borne that name, and because of that, we call him Trey. Trey. Babies. When Tay and I first met, one of the first conversations was actually about the number of children we wanted. Between 3 and 5, we decided at the time. Ultimately, we combined those 2 numbers and now have an even 8. JW, Naomi, Nolan, Kaylin, Trey, Judah, Olivia, and as of December 19th, 2019, Isaiah. It's 2023, they probably got another one. There's a lot of children. That's a lot of children. And the world doesn't quite know how to handle families as big as ours. They don't make minivans big enough for 10 people. So when we all go out somewhere, we go in a big used church van. Obviously, we can't sit at a restaurant booth. So when we go out, we make do however we can, whether splitting up or squishing tables together. Even when Tay and I had just 5 or 6 children, people would actually stare at us as we walked down the street, pointing at us and counting up the kids as if we were a gaggle of geese with a bunch of goslings trailing behind. But 2 or 3 generations ago, large families were the norm, especially those raised on farms and around agriculture. Men and women from those generations don't find it strange at all. Listen, the people that I'm doing this garden work exchange with, I asked if they wanted more kids, and the guy was like, yeah, because especially to help like on the farm, and the work we were doing yesterday was like very strenuous and back breaking. I was like, oh Lord, have mercy. And yeah, he admitted that I would like to have more children to help with this farming and this land. I'm like, that was the case back in the day, and I also feel like that made some children more resentful or less excited to want to have children of their own. Excuse me, because they had to grow up and help raise their brothers and sisters, or they felt like they were used to help domesticate the family. And then also times are different now. We don't live in a world where you have to survive off farming or for monetary gain. A lot of us have industrial jobs and other jobs that doesn't require technical jobs, that doesn't require being in the fields. So yeah, today's time, that might not be everybody's dream or goal to have a bunch of kids to help with the farm. But there was a point in time when the motivation behind having children, probably high on the list, was agriculture, to have them kids help in the field. I ain't saying it's right or wrong. It just times is what they is. But 2 or 3 generations ago, large families were the norm, especially those raised on farms and around agriculture. Men and women from those generations don't find it strange at all. They'll come up and tell me, oh, I was one of 8, or I was one of 12. We've met people who come from families of 15 or even 18. I don't know if Tay and I will ever have that many kids. Even now, when we're practically halfway there, I can't imagine trying to raise 18 children. But at the same time, if God blessed us with that many kids, we celebrate each and every one. All our babies are so different from one another. Some people think that we have so many children that we wouldn't be able to keep track of them all. But Tay and I can't envision what life would be like without even one of them. God made each one so special, so unique, so precious. Aww. You look at society today, and the preciousness of life often isn't valued as much as it once was. Lifespans are certainly longer now than they were 60 or 70 years ago, but we've gotten stingy with giving the gift of life. Some people look at children as expenses. You pay to feed them, to house them, to pay for braces and dance lessons in college. The U.S. Department of Agriculture says that the average family spends more than $233,000 to raise a child to age 17, and that's not even counting the emotional costs. I understand all that. Tay and I are fully aware how much it costs to feed a big family every day. And our kids, as wonderful as they are, have given us in return the value they bring to our family. The joy they've given Tay and me. The memories they've given each other. You can't put a return on that. From where I sit here in my farmhouse, a farmhouse filled with all this love and laughter and, yes, noise and chaos and sometimes tears, I know that life is a blessing. Every single one of our children, with their characteristics and quirks and outsized personalities, is a treasure that can't be measured. When you get to be a certain age, you start thinking about your legacy. What have you brought into the world? What have you given? Some people look at their career achievements or their bank account. Some have streets named after them. I think about the Ravens Stadium, now called the M&T Bank Stadium in Baltimore. A ring of honor circles the field, filled with the names of 20 or so Baltimore football greats from both the Ravens and the old Baltimore Colts. 2 statues stand outside the stadium, one of legendary Colts quarterback Johnny Unitas and the other one of Ravens linebacker Ray Lewis. Many kids look at those statues or the names around that ring of honor and believe that's the kind of legacy they want. To have someone to think enough of you to stick your name in a stadium for everyone to see, or to mold a hunk of bronze in your image. All of that stuff is great. But if you're really thinking about your legacy, what you want your memorial to the world to be, don't build a statue. Concentrate on your children. That's the sort of legacy the Bible holds dear. You can read Jesus' earthly genealogy all the way back to David and then all the way back to Adam if you want. That shows how much the people of the Bible valued family, how much they valued the shared history that passes down from parents to children to grandchildren. Families are complicated things, and not one of them is perfect. But God's blessings flow through a family's veins just as surely as blood does. We're shaped and molded by our mothers and fathers who were shaped and molded by theirs. And because of this, we're all influenced in some way by generations long gone. I never really knew my grandfather, Jasper Brown. I never got to hear his stories, but who he has helped make me the man I am today. There's a piece of him inside me, and because his grandfather was a piece of his upbringing, there's a piece of him in me too. Family is our real legacy. It's the reason why Tay and I moved out here in the first place. We want to raise our kids with whatever wisdom we have to offer and give them whatever character we have to give. We didn't want to see them just at dinner time. We didn't want to ship our babies off to school to be raised and taught by strangers. They're our children. We want them to grow up learning our values. We take our responsibility as parents seriously. If I ever feel my focus or family falter, I think about something that Tay told me one day. Jason, we grow a lot of food on this farm, she said. We help feed a lot of people we don't even know. We raise a lot of animals. We give a lot, and we're a blessing to this community. But don't you ever forget that the most important thing growing on First Fruits Farm is our family. The love between a husband and a wife. The love that we share with our children. That is the most important thing growing here. You want to talk about being centered? Tay is centered, and she helps center me. She reminds me of what's important. She reminds me of where we were in St. Louis when our bank accounts were full, but our hearts were empty, when we had more money than we knew what to do with, but not enough love for or time with each other. Watering and pruning. Most of our kids were born on the farm, so it's all they've ever known. Only JW has any memories of our lives before we came back to North Carolina. If he'd been older, if we had left St. Louis when he was 12, he might have been sad to leave the old life with this ridiculous mansion and luxury lifestyle and NFL playing dad. If the popular culture had sunk its teeth into them, he might have felt the pull of that life a little bit more. And listen, I get it. It's very attractive. When I go out and give talks to schools, many of the children and teens I speak to can't comprehend giving up the life of a professional athlete for a life of a farmer. To them, it doesn't make sense. Some of them look at me as if I were crazy. But J.W. was for it at the time. And for him, the farm wasn't a step down from wealth and security. It was a step up, a new adventure. Wow, a real pasture, a real pond. Look at all this land. What more could a boy want? And it's a life that not many children get to experience now. Many people have no idea how the food they see at the grocery store ever gets there or the work it takes to make it happen. Many have never even seen a farm, and because of that, with the right attitude, farming can feel as exciting as sailing or on a pirate ship or blasting into outer space. When JW was 7 or 8 years old, he and I were cleaning out some of the stalls in the barn. He was helping do a few little things, but I was doing most of the work and all of the real dirty work, mucking all the animal poop out of the barn. It was heavy and filthy and smelled to high heaven. He watched me work. He could see how hard it was. He could smell the loamy scent of animal poop just as I could. But still, he said, "Dad, can I do that? Please? Please? I'll do a good job, I promise." He's begging me, literally begging me to shovel poop. "You mark this day down and don't forget it for the rest of your life," I told him. "The day you beg me to shovel poop out of the barn." It was a good reminder to me of what a gift the farm is. More than that, it's a gift to be able to work on this farm. As adults, we forget about that sometimes. I look at all the work First Fruits requires of me, and I can't think of it as drudgery. It feels like the punishment, I look at all the work First Fruits requires of me, and I can think of it as drudgery. It feels like the punishment of Genesis 3:19 when God told Adam that by the sweat of your brow you will eat your food. But even work is a gift too. And sometimes our children remind us of that. And in that moment when JW begged to muck out the stalls, I thought, why can't we all look at work with that kind of enthusiasm? Hey, it's got to be done anyway, right? Why not enjoy doing it? Even today, when I get weary and tired, I look at my children's enthusiasm they show for it every day. They can be happy for no reason at all. That gives me encouragement. My children and their love of life give me extra fuel in the tank. They love the farm too. They don't always love everything about it, and you never know how that would change as they get older, but they see the beauty of it even as they do their own share of work. Maybe that work helps them see the beauty all the more. This place of sweat and toil can sometimes look like Eden to them. It looks like one of Naomi's beautiful pictures. Naomi gets it. She's a step back in time. She would have been right at home on the farm in the 1920s, I think. Whenever anyone needs help in the kitchen, she's the first to volunteer. She loves to cook. She loves to clean. She loves to make things with her hands. Naomi already knows how to do some sewing and knitting. I recently took some of our babies to the North Carolina State Fair, and I think all of the arts and crafts on display there, the variety and the quality nearly blew their little mind. All the quilts, all the artwork, all the hand-carved crafts. It was incredible. I knew that Naomi was already plotting what her own booth would carry in the future. I tried to stroke that creativity. We met a gentleman at the fair who makes amazing hand-woven baskets from strips of wood he pulls from oak trees. "Hey, I have oak trees on my farm," I told him. "That's great, because I need some new oak for my baskets," he said. "Would you be willing to barter? I'd give you a couple of my baskets right now if you let me come onto your property and get some wood." "I don't want your baskets," I told him. "I want you to teach me and my daughter Naomi how to weave them." This is an example of what the farm allows us to do. It's like a time machine back into the past. Most people, when they need something, just go out to Walmart or buy it on Amazon. Admittedly, we do our share of that too. But the farm gives us a window into simpler times when people made more of what they needed. It helps us see and appreciate and even value self-sufficiency. The ability to create what we need all by ourselves. And that is the motivation behind me reading these types of books. Being self-sufficient, planting seeds, growing food, saving seeds, making compost out of food scraps. All of these things are resources that will be needed if and when another pandemic strikes, if and when food isn't readily accessible at our local grocer, if and when we need to create our own clothes. Being self-sustainable is not a bad skill to have under your belt, and you can start with just the little steps such as saving seed, such as putting all your fruit and veggie scraps into a bucket and outside so it's not stinking up your house, letting it sit and letting it turn into soil. Simple things that may take some time, but eventually will be rewarding. So our farm is practically... Oh, wait a minute. So it helps us see and appreciate and even value self-sufficiency, the ability to create what we need all by ourselves. Very often what we create with our own two hands is more unique, more beautiful, and sometimes more functional than anything we could get at a store. Our farm is practically self-sufficient now. Yeah, and it doesn't come from a bunch of slave labor. It comes from your own labor. Our farm is practically self-sufficient now. Oh, we still buy plenty, but we don't have to buy that much extra food. After all, we don't just grow sweet potatoes. We raise chickens, we harvest fruits and vegetables, we even extract our own honey from the bees we keep on the property. Sure, putting on my white protective beekeeping suit makes me look a little like a marshmallow, but that's okay because the fresh honey is delicious. How many children have a chance to enjoy their own homegrown honey? That's an opportunity we never would have had if I stayed in the NFL. Making honey is not a fast process. Buying a plastic bottle of the stuff is certainly more convenient. But the process, just as much as what we do on our farm, teaches our children the real value of that honey. How hard the bees work to make it. How laborious and fun it is to extract it. And that makes that honey all the sweeter when they finally get a chance to taste it. Like that honey, life on the farm is a little slower for our children, but a little sweeter. They're learning that doing their best means taking the time to do it right and do it well. They see the beauty and creativity that goes into the work here. Managing and growing things on the farm isn't just work, it's art. No boxes. When I think of those baskets that Naomi and I saw at the state fair, one thing's pretty obvious just by looking at them. Every single one is different. These aren't manufactured by machine. They're crafted by a skilled hand, just like God crafts each of us. Some of the differences are due to design, but some of the more subtle variations come simply from the material they're made of. No strip of bark is exactly the same width or color or destiny, which makes each basket, even among baskets that are essentially the same size and shape, as unique and individual as fingerprints. You look at our farm and you see that God-given individuality everywhere. We have tons of the same kinds of oak trees, but each one is still unique, shaped by its own environment and experience. All the millions of sweet potatoes we've grown might look the same at first glance, but no two are identical. Children are the same way. That goes without saying, really. Any parent knows each child is unique, but in most places that doesn't matter. We stick them all in the same box and expect them to thrive in the same environment. We have to. There's no way that one educational system, no matter how good or creative, can truly hone in on each child's individual needs and styles. I noticed that working in the school system, and I didn't like it. Because we homeschool our babies and because we live way out in the middle of nowhere, we have the ability to tailor our children's upbringing in a way that not many parents or teachers can. Take Noah, for instance, our little preacher. Noah is smart, man. He didn't just memorize the 23rd Psalm when he was 4. He also learned how to read. When Tay was teaching Naomi how to piece together her ABCs and sound words out, Noah was in the same room, soaking it all in. He'd look at these books and listen to the lessons and puzzle many of those words all by himself. When he was just 5, I sat him down on my lap and tried to teach him a little something out of my old King James Bible, and he started reading it to me. I knew he was reading, not reciting something from memory, because when Noah would get to a word he couldn't pronounce, and there's a lot of them in the King James Version, he'd stop and work through it, syllable by syllable. Nebuchadnezzar, he'd say. But he's also very energetic. If he were in public school, they have a label for him, no question, and maybe a couple. Hyperactive, ADHD, you name it. And then they suggest some medication to calm him down. I get it. When you're in a classroom catering to 30 other kids, you can't have one disrupting this class. You don't have time for special treatment. But on the farm, when I see that Noah's getting particularly wriggly and not focusing on the lesson, I'll lead him to the back window. You see that tree out there? I'll say, pointing to a solitary oak tree a quarter mile away. Yes, Dad. Noah, I want you to run to that tree and get me a leaf. Okay, Dad. And he'll dash outside and get one for me. When he returns, I'll say, Noah, you tired yet? No, Dad. Okay, go back to that tree and give me another leaf. Sometimes he'll need to make that run 3 or 4 times, but eventually say, okay, Dad, I'm tired now. Good, I'll say. Now let's get back to our schoolwork. It's the beauty of homeschooling. It's the beauty of living on the farm. We're able to treat each child individually just as God made them. A teacher in a classroom just can't do that. As much as he or she might want to, the system doesn't allow it. Our kids, just like all kids, have different needs. They all learn in different ways. They all have different hopes and fears and problems. They all respond to different motivators. Out here, we don't need to have a single solitary box that all 8 children have to fit in, as they've got 1,000-acre box to explore. Let me pause here. I think that's a very important point. And I also want to add that homeschooling can be a group or collective effort, because having 8 children and even trying to manage their different needs and emotions can be challenging for a 2-parent home. Or, Jason's also running a farm, so his wife having to deal with all 8 of them throughout the day or whatever. So that's where community comes in. And I advocate for those that identify as tribe, that identify as community, living in close vicinity to each other, so that you can all help raise your children. Excuse me. You can all shop, eat, barter amongst each other. You can all have education provided through the people in the community that have different skills. Not saying one teacher has to teach every subject. Maybe I come in for an hour or 2 a day and teach about theater or poetry or language arts or writing or something like that. Another teacher, because math ain't my area, another teacher that's great in math comes in and helps with the math. Another person in the community comes in and helps with the culinary arts or the gardening. Another teacher comes in and help with the science stuff. It takes a village. It really takes a village. And I don't feel like, personally, as someone that has worked as a teacher assistant, substitute teaching, I've done in-home daycare and halfway homeschooling. I worked as a cafeteria lady in school. I'm not with the public school dynamic. I'm just not. I really advocate for homeschooling. And it does require intentionality from you, the parent, and it does take away time. When I was homeschooling and doing in-home daycare, it could take up your whole day trying to put your attention into these children. So that's why I also I'm with the mentality of making it a group effort, making it a tribe thing, so that the responsibility doesn't fall on one person and then they get burnt out and also don't have much control over the rest of their day. Like, taking care of and pouring into a child all day, especially if you don't have children or they're not yours, is one thing. But being a parent and having to be with them all day, not like it's a crime, like you can't be with your child all day, but just focus intentionally on them and them learning all day, and like you forgetting yourself and your needs, that's not cool either. So we need balance in that area. All right, moving along. Let's finish up this chapter. Bible study. Our kids usually are up by 6:30 to do their chores, but in early 2018, I thought my oldest, JW, was ready to dive into some man-sized study. So I told him, JW, I want you to be sitting down at the table by 6 on Monday morning. Sure enough, he was there, and we started going over Proverbs. I wanted him to begin to understand the value of biblical wisdom in God's word. I wasn't showing favoritism. It was, if anything, an extra duty I saddled JW with. But Naomi and Noah didn't see it that way. All they saw was that JW was getting some special alone time with Dad. So about a month later, they walked up to me and gave me a petition. Dad, we want to come to your Bible study, Naomi said. But it's so early in the morning, I warned them. We don't care, Naomi told me. We want to come down and read the Bible with you too. Are you sure? I asked. I watched Naomi's and Noah's heads bob up and down. Well, all right, I said, the more the merrier. So they started diving into the scriptures with me too. Can you imagine kids clamoring to study the word of God? They started soaking it up like a sponge, so much so that they even kicked me out of their little Bible study. Dad, we know you're busy, JW said. We got this. If we have any questions, we'll ask. I had mixed feelings about that initially, especially since my babies were so young. running a Bible study by themselves, it's strange. And because I know that they aren't going to be kids forever, I want to spend as much time with them as I can. But Tay and I are grateful. It's like Proverbs 22:6 tells us, train up a child in the way he should go. Even when he is old enough, he will not depart from it. We're training our children in the Word of God, even if they're partially training themselves. Here's the thing. Children should, in part, train themselves. They need to learn stuff on their own. Parents are there to nurture and teach and push, but we also need to remember to let go at times. The best lessons, the most memorable lessons, aren't the ones you read or told, but the ones you experience for yourself. Don't get me wrong. Tay and I protect our children from a lot of things. Our farm protects them from the dangers of city or suburban life. Our homeschooling protects them from teachings we don't approve of and helps guard them to some extent from some of the cultural hooks that sink into so many kids. And as our children grow older, we'll have rules and guidelines to help deal with social media and dating and all the other perils that come with growing up. But the farm also allows our children to be children. They do their chores, they climb trees, they skin their knees, get into things they shouldn't, and in JW's case, sometimes even drive the tractor when I say not to. We don't want to be helicopter parents. On a farm this size, we need to be able to trust our children even when we can't see them. Eventually, all parents, no matter where they live, have to find a way to that same sense of trust. Children aren't children forever. They'll be out of your care quicker than you think, and they'll be forced to make their own decisions without your input. Sooner or later, we've got to learn to let go. All parents do. Better to do it in stages, we feel. Better to give them a sense of both freedom and responsibility while they're still at home, before they go buck wild without you. He didn't say that, I'm saying it. In 1963, just 80 minutes away from here, my grandfather, Jasper Brown, risked his life to offer his children better ones. He took them to a segregated school, hoping to give his children the sort of education that so many black children in the state were denied. Maybe his sons and daughters wouldn't have to be farmers. They'd have a choice. He succeeded in that. He helped give them that choice. And nearly 50 years later, his grandson chose to be a farmer. He chose to return to the roots made by Grandpa Jasper all those years before. Education, as I think my grandpa knew, isn't just something you squeeze out of schools and books. Wisdom sure doesn't just come from a class. Oh, we don't skimp on knowledge on First Fruits Farm. Our children are getting what I consider a first-class education. They're learning things that most kids today will never even have the chance to experience. How to milk cows, how to drive tractors, how to extract honey from heavy, sticky honeycombs. And through chores, they learn lessons that don't necessarily know they're even learning. They are taught what it takes to grow food and what it means to work hard. They see the beauty and logic of God's creation all around them and how bountiful He's provided for us. They see in Tay and me, hopefully, what it means to be a mother and father who love and sacrifice and discipline and raise children in God's Word. Tay once told me that the most important thing growing up on First Fruits Farm is our family. She's absolutely right. Thanks to God, it's been a bumper crop so far. And then he's got some pictures of himself and his family, which I'm not going to really show you all. Get the book on Amazon. So that is the end of chapter 10. Thank you so much for tuning in. Again, if you need to catch up on these via my YouTube channel, it's Morgan Myers, Myers. Red logo, yellow M inside. And you can catch up on the rest of these chapters as well as some other books by Black authors. Thank y'all so much. I'll be tuning in for chapter 11 with you all again soon. Peace and love.